So this is a bit unusual. I spotted this on eBay and it was an auction and I put a bid in on it and I won it, obviously. And yeah, it just struck me as a bit interesting. So basically what we've got here is a small Stirling engine driving a model of an agricultural sifter. It's the kind of thing that I think, you know, was used to sift corn husks, get the corn away from the husk, that kind of thing. That's what I think it is. And it's quite a nice little model, actually. Nice castings and all the rest of it. But yeah, it's just a little bit unusual. And I really like the look of it. And this kind of thing interests me. So I thought, yeah, why not? So the model of the Sifter is very definitely a commercial product. It's made out of castings and there is actually a made in France cast onto one side. I'll close in and have a look at that. Hopefully you can see that. Clearly says made in France across there. So yes, that's commercial, the little Sifter model. No doubt about that. The Stirling engine I'm not so sure about. Let's have a closer look at that. Yeah, it could be commercial. I'm not really sure. It might be scratch built. Difficult to tell, really. But it's quite nicely made, whichever way it was done. But yeah, it's hard to tell. I'm not really sure on the Stirling engine front. The firebox and chimney arrangement, that's definitely scratch built, and the chimney's not central with the rest of the firebox. I don't know whether that's because it got so hot the solder melted when it was being used. This bit of copper tube for the chimney's only just soldered onto the top there, so I'm going to have to sort that out. And also, with this kind of firebox arrangement on a Stirling engine, you really need vent holes around the base to let air in for the flame. So I'll probably put some vent holes in the base and of the firebox and give it a good clean up. But yeah, it's a lovely little model. So I'll do the clean up on the firebox and straighten up the chimney, and I don't really think there's anything else to do to it. Just oil it, and then we'll give it a go. I think my little tiny Bix gas burner would be ideal for that. We'll try that, see if we can get it to run. Whether there's enough power in the Stirling engine to actually operate the Sifter, I very much doubt it. But you know, it's been built and the seller said it works, so maybe there is. I don't know. But well, like I said, I'll do some clean up work on this, and then we'll see if we can get it running. Well, as you can see, I've spent a little bit of time on the firebox and chimney. I unsoldered it, and I ended up boring a larger hole in the top of the firebox. Then I machined up a block to go in so it fits into that hole. It's got a hole drilled through it, obviously, to allow the heat to come out. And the top part is the same size as the internal diameter of the chimney, so that centered it up nicely. And then I just basically soldered the whole lot back in place and cleaned it up on the wire wheel, and it's come out really nice. I've also drilled some vent holes, 3 vent holes around the base, because you really need that to let the air in for the burner to work properly. I've oiled the whole thing up, so you know, it's all the rotating parts are turned freely. So I guess all we've got left to do is try it. The little round Bix burner is ideal for this, so we'll just get that lit. We'll turn that right. I'm going to turn it right down. We don't really need much of a flame, I think. I'll stick that in there. It may be that there isn't enough air. Well, the gas burner didn't want to play to start with, but it's all right now. Don't know why. So let's see if we can get this thing running. Well, I'm absolutely amazed. I didn't think this would produce enough power to run the Sifter, but it runs superbly. Isn't that amazing? Not quite sure what's making that racket. Something's knocking, isn't it? Well, it definitely works. It was interesting that it was quiet to start with. I don't know how well you can see that, but that racket was one of the connecting rods coming loose inside the actual engine itself. So that was a very short-lived run, but it did work, and it powered the sifter. So obviously I'm going to have to wait for it to cool down, and then I'm going to have to disassemble the Stirling engine completely and find out what's going on. But it did run, and it powered the sifter, so I'll consider that a success. Well, I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see this, but this is one of the piston rods, and that is the crank end, and as you can see, it's pulled away from the end of the piston rod. This is absolutely tiny. I mean, you can see this is the end of my tiny little scriber, and you can see how small that is. What is interesting is on the end of the other, that's the other crank there, there is a tiny little ball race bearing. So this thing was quite well made, but I'm not really sure how, there doesn't appear to be any thread on the end of this rod, so I'm not really sure how that's supposed to fix onto there. So I'm going to try reattaching it with some Loctite and see if that helps. But then again, you know, this does get hot, so I don't know. We'll try. Well, I was wrong. Looking at it under a magnifying glass, there is a thread on the end here. And there is the actual crank end. So, yeah, I'm going to try and thread it back on and probably put some Loctite on it, see if that helps. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's my finger to give you some idea of how big all of this is. Amazing. I got it all back together, but my God, that was very, very difficult. I've now got the utmost of respect for whoever built this, because they must have been a watchmaker. The parts inside that cylinder are tiny, and I'm just showing you this because I think you can hopefully see that this outer crank has a ball race bearing on the end of it. Now, to give you some idea of the size, that ball race bearing is less than 5mm in diameter. The outside diameter of that, 5mm, less than 5mm. So yes, it is absolutely tiny in there. However, it is all back together. Whether it's going to run again, I do not know. I'm going to leave it for a few hours to let the Loctite take a good grip, and then we'll come back and see if we can run it again. Time to see if this thing still works after my repairs. And it does. Amazingly. It's not running as smoothly as it did though when it very first powered up. I mean, it's not making that horrific racket that it was making before, but it's tapping a bit. Still, it works. Which is the whole point. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it won't come apart this time. Let's see if we can have a look at it from the other side. I think what we'll do is we'll take the drive belt off and see how well it runs without it having to drive the sifter. Drive belt off. Yeah, that's what I thought. This is actually, the drive band is actually quite tight. It might benefit from sort of slightly larger drive band, but I'll put it back on again. Well, I've found a rubber dry band, which is about the right size, and I've removed the chimney and smokestack. Yeah, I think the problem was I haven't turned the burner up or anything, but this stops the burner from burning properly, so it wasn't really getting a lot of heat. I mean, that's way better now than it was before. So, the reason it stopped this time was it would just appear this engine is determined to self-destruct. This is the original mounting block. There's my new one, I've just made that one up, bit of mahogany cube. This is not even remotely square, this thing was all over the place. And basically what happened, the engine was glued to the top of this. That's right, glued. Aluminium to wood. And obviously the continued heating of this, the glue just gave way and the engine had just come away from the mount, which is why it stopped. And obviously come away from the flame. So I've basically made a new block, drilled a hole all the way through. I drilled and tapped a 6BA hole in the base of the engine block. So there's now a 6BA bolt holding all of that together. But I'm not holding out much hope because, like I said, this thing just absolutely is determined to foil me. So I'll get the burner lit and we'll see whether we can get it running again. Well, we're off. It is running. And it's self-destructed again. Let's have a look and see what's happened. Oh. I don't know whether you're going to be able to see that. Probably not. I'm gonna... So this time the other one, the bearing, the conrod end has come off of the bearing. Oh, this thing's going to be the death of me. Well, hopefully you can clearly see now what's happened. This is the crank here, and obviously it's come off the outer of the bearing. I can't see anything that actually holds it in place unless it was just a press fit. I think what I'm going to try and do is see if I've got some washers that I can use to like sandwich that between, so that it stays on the bearing, and then we need to put some sort of clip on the end of the shaft. But obviously that, you know, I mean that shaft there, that's got to be what, 2mm maybe, something like that. So, well, this is just fun, isn't it? I don't know whether this is going to hold or not, but this is the solution I've come up with. Basically, I found some very tiny washers, which I've sandwiched, put either side of the crank, and that should stop it from slipping off of the bearing. I was scratching my head what I can use to hold the whole lot in place. So it's pretty crude, but it may work. This is a piece of plastic that was cut from the end of a radio controlled servo arm. And it had a tiny little hole in, which I forced it over the end of the crank pin, so it's a really tight fit on the crank pin. Now, whether or not the heat will loosen it off, I don't know. Ideally, what you need is a piece, similar size piece, but made from something like PTFE. And that would be ideal because that would easily withstand the temperature. But we'll give it a go and see if we can get this thing to run again without it falling apart. As I said, I'm going to leave the firebox and chimney off for the time being because the burner works much better without it. So, well, it's running, but it's run before, obviously. Certainly seems to be more steady now than it was before. It's definitely a lot better than it was. Seem to be slowing down. Well, there we go. I think that's the longest it's run. Doesn't seem to be falling apart, which is great. So I'm going to call it a day for the little Stirling engine and model grain sifter. Yeah, what a fight that was. Still wouldn't be any fun if it was easy, would it? Alright, I'll leave it there for now. As always, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks very much for watching. Cheers. Let's turn the gas off.